Free agency is here, and I'm predicting who the Tennessee Titans will sign on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200. If your bet wins, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Free agency is here. The legal tampering period starts on Monday. Free agency officially kicks off on Friday. I am predicting who I think the Tennessee Titans will sign in this first wave. I've got 10 names for you. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. Before I get into it, though, thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. There is going to be a ton of Tennessee Titans news, reports, breaking stuff happening throughout the week. Make sure that you stick with me here on the #1 Tennessee Titans podcast in the world. I did 2 bonus episodes this week to get you guys ready for free agency. And as the news breaks, I'm going to be ready to have bonus episodes for you guys again. So make sure that you stick with me here. Thumbs up on the video as well. Show's always free. All I ask for in return is the press of a button. But starting off on the offensive side of the ball, the Tennessee Titans need a wide receiver. And this is a player who I wasn't super high on when the process initially started, but I've learned more and I've softened up to the idea of adding Darnell Mooney. And again, these are not my wants. These are my predictions for who I think the Tennessee Titans actually will sign. And I think Darnell Mooney makes a ton of sense for the Titans. He's a guy with a ton of speed, who's a decent route runner, who can play on the outside. He's good at getting open in the intermediate and deep areas of the field, which matches up perfectly with Will Levis's arm strength. He's had some down statistical seasons the past couple years with the Bears, but you go back to 2021, 81 catches, 1,055 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's still only 26 years old. Look, it is clear. I've told you the truth. I would prefer to sign Hollywood Brown. That would be my pick. If I could control what the Titans are doing, I would bring in Hollywood Brown. But I think Darnell Mooney gives you a lot of similar things at a year younger and a guy who's going to be cheaper as well. I think Darnell Mooney is looking at about 1 to 2 year contract, $9 to $10 million, probably end up as about $6 to $7 million of actual cap hit with the way that the contract is structured. But Darnell Mooney has that connection with Tyke Tolbert, who is now the Titans wide receiver coach. He was coaching with Chicago last year. And again, I think his skill set does fit with what the Titans need on the offensive side of the ball. I would prefer Hollywood Brown, but I think the Titans actually can go out and sign Darnell Mooney. I think that's something that they will do. But the Titans also need help at offensive tackle. And while there are plenty of names that we have discussed, my #1 option, and the guy I think the Titans do ultimately sign, is Jonah Williams, former Cincinnati Bengal. You have the Brian Callahan connection, and Jonah Williams is, I know the numbers don't necessarily look great. If you look up, he had 8 sacks allowed last year, but he has been an above average pass protector. He is reliable. The guy does not miss time. Last 3 seasons, 16, 16, 17 games played. He has great size, 6'5", 300 pounds, and he's only 26 years old. So he's another guy who fits the Tennessee Titans timeline. He's got versatility as well, which I think is one of the most important things here. Jonah Williams has played left tackle and he's played right tackle. So if you're looking at what the Tennessee Titans can do in the NFL draft, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into one spot where, oh, we can't take this talented player because he plays right tackle and we need to we can't take this talented player because he plays left tackle and we need a right tackle. The Titans are going to have to worry about that with Jonah Williams. He's going to be able to flip and do whatever, which, again, gives the Titans great versatility and flexibility in the NFL draft. So I think that Jonah Williams makes sense. If the Titans don't go with Jonah Williams, hopefully it's Michael Onwenu, who I think makes some sense for them as well. But if they don't go with either of those, hopefully they go way cheaper and just go with another one-year option and admit that they don't have the problem solved. I would understand that as well. But Jonah Williams is who I think makes the most sense, and I think that is who the Titans will bring in on the offensive line. And I also think he's going to get the best version of Jonah Williams, Brian Callahan is, because he has Bill Callahan as the offensive line coach. That has to matter. So you take a former first-round pick who's still 26 years old, who has shown some flashes of good play, and you put him into an offense that he understands and that he can teach to the other offensive linemen as well. The final name that I'm throwing in here is at center, and I think it's Lloyd Cushenberry. So I'll be upfront and honest. I wanted this to be Andre James. I wanted the Titans to go sign Andre James from the Las Vegas Raiders. I think it was a perfect fit. I think it made a ton of sense. But the reality here is, right as I was sitting down to record this podcast, Andre James was signed by the Las Vegas Raiders. He was brought back by his initial team. Nothing the Titans can do there. So to me, there's only two options at center that really make a ton of sense. And it's Connor Williams from the Dolphins and Lloyd Cushenberry for the Broncos. And Connor Williams is coming off an ACL tear, so I worry about his ability to be ready. I worry about the Titans being willing to spend money on him. I like Connor Williams a ton. He was my number one option going into the season, but at this point, after the ACL tear in week 14, it's just hard to know whether he's worth the money, whether he's going to be ready. So Lloyd Cushenberry from the Denver Broncos makes the most sense for me. He's an incredibly athletic guy, 6'4". He has the power to stop guys, great hands. He has anchor ability, which is something the Titans have been missing. I think that he has enough athleticism as well to really get into the Titans offensive system and make a difference. So I am a big, big fan of bringing in Lloyd Cushenberry for the Titans. I think that makes a ton of sense, and I think that's who they should go after now, because the only other center on the market that is better than Aaron Brewer, in my opinion, is Connor Williams. So if you're not going to go Connor Williams because of the ACL worries, then you need to go Lloyd Cushenberry, and I think the Titans need a center in free agency. They need to focus on offensive tackle and wide receiver and cornerback in the draft. They need to go out and fill some of these positions like linebacker, like center, and I think that Lloyd Cushenberry makes a ton of sense for the Tennessee Titans. So Darnell Mooney, Jonah Williams, Lloyd Cushenberry, those are my predictions for the Tennessee Titans. The big ticket names on offense, I think that Jonah Williams is probably going to get about 2 to 3 years, $40 to $45 million. Darnell Mooney, about 1 to 2 years, $9 to $10 million. And then Lloyd Cushenberry, I think, is going to be about 2 to 3 years, about $10 to $12 million as well. So we'll go through all the contract information as the Titans actually sign free agents, but those are my predictions for who they actually bring in. We're going to go to some of the big ticket names or the top names for the Titans on the defensive side of the ball now, and then we'll finish out the show with some role players on offense as well. Before we get into the rest of today's show, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your card to the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available for U.S. customers. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We just went over the The big name free agent signings I think the Titans will make on the offensive side of the ball, Darnell Mooney, Jonah Williams, and Lloyd Cushenberry. Now I want to get into the defensive side of the ball where the Titans need a ton of additions as well, primarily in the secondary. And I also think they bring back one of their own on defense. Before I get into that, thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first to listen each and every day. Again, going to be a lot of news this week, a lot of reports, a lot to discuss. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed to the number one Tennessee Titans podcast in the world, Locked On Titans, where it's your team every day. But on defense, at safety, there are a ton of great options. Great safety market. We saw Kevin Byard get signed on Sunday, go to the Chicago Bears on a 2-year deal. Smart to get in early before free agency actually kicks off. But I think the Titans go out and get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Got a tie to Denard Wilson. They were together in the defensive backfield for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2022. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson did have an injury issue last year. He missed from week 2 to week 18 with a pectoral injury. He came back for the Lions playoff run, though. But a pectoral tear isn't like soft tissue. It's not something that I think is going to repeat over and over again. So he should be healthy, should be good to go. Look, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is just a physical beast. Okay, he is a tone setter. He is an intimidator across the middle of the field. The Titans, look, Kevin Byard is great. My favorite Titan of all time, a turnover machine. Amani Hooker as well. Great ball production. Those guys get to the football, but neither of them are physical enforcers over the middle of the field that make wide receivers worry about going those crossing routes in the intermediate range. All right? Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is that. He has the ability to play in the slot. He can play some safety as well. And in what I expect to be Denard Wilson's attacking defense, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson does make a ton of sense. Again, we know that Denard Wilson is studied under Todd Bowles, Greg Williams, was under Mike McDonald last year. Guys who want to bring pressure, who want to confuse you, who want to use their safeties, their linebackers, everybody, their cornerbacks. They want to get everybody involved in the pressure looks, in the pressure scheme to confuse the offenses that they're going against. So I think in that style of defense, which is what my expectation is from Denard Wilson, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson does make a lot of sense. That would allow Amani Hooker to go back and be that deep safety to cover the middle of the field rather than signing a Geno Stone. The Titans would play Amani Hooker in the Geno Stone role that we saw last year with the Ravens where he had 7 interceptions. Amani Hooker would go back to being that deep coverage center field type safety who can read the quarterback's eyes, who has range to go from sideline to sideline. Let Chauncey Gardner-Johnson be that guy who plays man coverage on tight ends, is in the box on early downs when they're in nickel. I think it would make a ton of sense. Look, I would prefer a Cam Curl. I would prefer a Geno Stone. But I think the connection with Denard Wilson, how much he loves Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, getting him for like 2 years, $13 million total, 2 years, $12 million total. I think that would be a good signing, and it would make me happy, even if he's not my top choice on the board. So Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think, is signed by the Tennessee Titans. At cornerback, though, I think they also go with some connections here. Ronald Darby. Ronald Darby is 30 years old, so he's not as high on my list as some other guys are. But with Jalen Johnson getting a big deal, with L'Jarius Sneed getting traded, there aren't a ton of great options. I think Kendall Fuller could make some sense for the Titans if they want to pay a little bit more. But if they decide, hey, we're not going to be able to fix cornerback this year, we're going to focus on offensive line and wide receiver. We're not going to be able to fix this perfectly overnight. That might be a next year situation. Well, I think Ronald Darby, who just spent the season with the Baltimore Ravens, understands what Denard Wilson is going to want, has the ability to play man coverage, and isn't afraid of playing man coverage. I think Ronald Darby could be a great fit for the Tennessee Titans at one of the cornerback spots. But the reality is the Tennessee Titans need 2 cornerbacks. And I think the other cornerback spot if you're going to go with Ronald Darby at one spot, who's an older guy who maybe doesn't have upside, then the other spot you want to go with someone with the opposite of that, with a ton of upside. And I think that player is Jeff Okudah. All right, so you got Steve Jackson, who is the Titans defensive back coach, who coached Jeff Okudah last year when Okudah kind of, I don't want to say a renaissance per se, but after being considered a bust with the Detroit Lions, after being a high first-round pick, Okudah had a pretty solid season with the Falcons last year. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. So that's great size for a cornerback. He also has speed, man coverage ability. He's not afraid to press. And I think that he's got a ton of upside. Again, at 25 years old, as a former top 5 pick who is just getting comfortable and maybe getting past some of the expectations of how high he was drafted, I think that getting Jeff Okudah right now and taking a chance on him, look, Darby is going to be 1 year, $4 million. Okudah probably 1 year, I would even be okay with giving Okudah a second year at $5 million, $6 million, just to have the opportunity to get him in the defense and see if they can really hone all of that talent, that physical ability, that size. He has prototype cornerback measurements. I think having Jeff Okudah on the Titans as a cornerback too, someone who can learn from Roger McCreary, someone who can be with Denard Wilson, someone who can stay with Steve Jackson like he was last year and had the best year of his career. I think that would be a great fit. I'm really on board with the Titans bringing in Jeff Okudah as a low-risk, high-reward project. All right? And speaking of that, there's one of those that I want on or at linebacker as well. But first, I want to say I do think the Titans bring back Azeez Al-Shaair. Look, I'm not as high on Azeez as a lot of people in the fan base. Yes, he had a ton of tackles. He missed tackles. He has the tendency to get out of his gap. He has a tendency to not be able to get off blocks because he's not the strongest, most powerful linebacker at 6'2", but he's got speed. He was okay in coverage. He is sideline to sideline. He's physical. He's willing. He seems like a good dude in the locker room as well. Like, he's just a reliable player that you can count on. So I think the Titans do ultimately bring Azeez Al-Shaair back. But my thing is they're going to need 2 linebackers. The Titans need to sign 2 linebackers. And for the other spot, I have 2 names. Number 1, Devin White. Again, same thing like Jeff Okudah. You're taking a chance on a very high draft pick who maybe hasn't panned out. He was the number 5 overall pick, and he comes from a Tampa Bay system. Who runs the Tampa Bay system? Todd Bowles. Who has Denard Wilson learned from? Todd Bowles. So I think that seeing what Devin White did in the Todd Bowles system and saying, hey, I can bring him over here. We don't have a lot of great options to fix linebacker right now. So I'm going to bring him in and see if I can get the best out of him in our system. But with that philosophy, I would rather the Titans go with Isaiah Simmons. Simmons is a weak side linebacker. So you let Azeez. I think Azeez is ultimately more of a weak side linebacker as well because of his size and his speed. But if you're going to have Azeez play the number 1 linebacker spot like he did last year, then have Isaiah Simmons be that second linebacker next to him. Simmons is a freak show athlete, 6'4", former high first-round pick as well. Is going to be super cheap because he's a linebacker and he's not anywhere near the top of the market as well. You bring him in for 1 year, $4 million. See if you can. And Isaiah Simmons, some people thought he would be a safety slot guy, blah, blah, blah. The Ravens just had Kyle Hamilton. And I'm not saying that Isaiah Simmons is Kyle Hamilton, of course, an all-pro, but I think that some people envisioned Isaiah Simmons in a Kyle Hamilton style role when he was coming out of college. So maybe you take a chance on him and see if he can actually do some of that. I think that would be critical. So Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at safety, Jeff Okudah and Ronald Darby at cornerback, Azeez Al-Shaair. That's who I think the Titans do sign on defense, with just throwing it in there. I'd love to see them bring in Isaiah Simmons as a cheap linebacker project as well. But with that being said, we have some role player positions on the offensive side of the ball that I have predictions for. Let me know your predictions down below. Can't wait to see what you guys have to say. Before we continue today's show, though, do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on, again, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It was $150 just last week. FanDuel has kicked it up. Again, $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com lockkedon. That's LOCKEDON, and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Titans fans, let's cap off today's free agency prediction episode of the Locked On Titans podcast. I've gone over the offensive side of the ball. I think Darnell Mooney, Jonah Williams, and Lloyd Cushenberry. I've gone over the defensive side of the ball. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Jeff Okudah, and Ronald Darby, Azeez Al-Shire. Now I want to get into more offense, but some of the role players at positions that maybe aren't at the top of the Titans wish list. Before I get into that, thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first to listen each and every day. Also want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's now also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. It's called Locked On Sports Today, and it's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts from Locked On, plus coverage of every league from our national shows. Find Locked On Sports Today 24/7, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Backup quarterback. So we got a report from, it was Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano from ESPN. But we got a report basically saying that the Titans are interested in Brandon Allen. Now, we've gone through my free agent list here. These are the players, again, that I think the Titans will sign. Not who I want them to sign. But Darnell Mooney, Jonah Williams, Lloyd Cushenberry, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Jeff Okudah, Ronald Darby, Azeez Al-Shire. These are all players that I would be happy with. At minimum, I would be happy with. Brandon Allen is not one that I would be happy with. All right. Brandon Allen is 32 years old. He was in Cincinnati for 3 years, 2020 to 2022. So he knows Brian Callahan. I get that. He was just in San Francisco. So Rand Carthon's probably going to have good information on him. I get that. And that's probably why Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano in their report, that's probably why Brandon Allen was linked to the Titans, because it's a relationship business. If you haven't realized by now, maybe you're a young kid, maybe you're a naive adult, life is about relationships. It is truly about who you know, not what you know. That is a real thing. One of the realest things that you hear as a kid that truly turns out to be right as you get to an adult. If you're a young person who watches my show, trust me when I tell you that relationships are everything. Network, network, network. All right. But anyway, off my life relationship soapbox, I would not like this signing. I would not like to go after Brandon Allen again. Like I said, 32 years old. His career, he's had 56.7% completion percentage, 107.4 yards per game. He is 2-7 in the games that he started, 1-4 or 1-5 in his last 2 years. The guy does not win games. He does not produce. He is not someone who I think could come in and steer the ship if Will Levis was out for the last 2 quarters of a game, or Will Levis was out for 3 weeks with a rolled ankle. I do not have faith that Brandon Allen could get the Titans a win, that Brandon Allen could steer the ship home safely when the captain was out. I do not believe that. I would hate this signing, but I think the Titans do it. The report that we heard, the connections, 1 year, $2.5, $3 million. But when you have guys like Josh Dobbs, Drew Lock, Jameis Winston, Gardner Minshew, I can't be on board with this as a good signing. This is one of the worst backup quarterbacks in the NFL. I get that he knows the system. He knows Callahan, but I would just hope for better. I don't know what else to say. I would just hope for better. But moving on to backup running back, where I'm thinking, whoa, Baker Mayfield, $100 million, 3 years. So many deals are happening right now with players who got cut. Remember, if you get cut, like you're a cap casualty, you can sign anywhere as quick as you want. You don't have to wait for free agency to begin. So that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy right there. But moving right along, backup running back for the Tennessee Titans, I think it's Antonio Gibson. I think the Titans bring in Antonio Gibson. Gibson has a connection with Randy Jordan, the Titans' new running back coach who's coming over from Washington. He's coached with him. He knows him. Antonio Gibson is 6'2", 220 pounds. All right, this is a monster of a guy who's not known as a big physical tough dude. He is known as an athlete. So I love the size and athleticism combination. In his last 2 seasons, he had 94 catches, 742 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Holy cow. What an incredible receiving threat out of the backfield. In 2021, in the rushing game, he had 1,037 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. So you're talking about a guy who has shown elite running back ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. And you're also talking about somebody who, when Washington had a decent offensive line, he ran for 1,000 yards. He also has the ability to return the football. And the Titans need help in the return game and need as many options there as they can get. Antonio Gibson would be a slam dunk backup to Tajay Spears. He's a guy who gives you versatility. He can run the football. He can catch the football. And he's way bigger than Tajay Spears too, which I think can help him on the short yardage stuff. If you go look, short yardage, Antonio Gibson has actually been awesome. So he can be a short yardage back. He also has the versatility to keep the offense unpredictable. He mirrors with Tajay Spears and their abilities out of the backfield, and he gives you the added bonus of having return play. And he's going to be, $3 million? And you have a connection to your running back coach? Man, Antonio Gibson would be just an absolute home run. And I think that the Titans could get Antonio Gibson to a place where I think Antonio Gibson could be like a Pro Bowl level running back. Like, I really do believe in his talent. And if he's used correctly in the right system, I think Antonio Gibson is a game changer, So I think that's something that they absolutely have to do. Finally, CJ Uzomah as a third tight end who's a blocker, who can play in 2 tight end sets with Chigakonkwo on some early downs, come out on later downs. Josh Wiley and him can kind of split that second tight end role up depending on the responsibility. But CJ Uzomah was graded as the 4th best run blocking tight end in the NFL last year, according to Pro Football Focus. So I don't need a super expensive tight end. I don't want to use a draft pick on a tight end when I have Chigakonkwo and Josh Wiley in back-to-back drafts. Bring in CJ Uzomah. He can teach the offense and teach the terminology to the tight ends with the Brian Callahan relationship. Again, he's a great run blocker, so that's what you want from that position in that role. He can do some tight end 2 stuff. Him and Josh Wiley splitting that. I think it's an absolute perfect fit. So again, Darnell Mooney at wide receiver. Jonah Williams at offensive tackle. Lloyd Cushenberry at center. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at safety. Ronald Darby and Jeff Okudah at cornerback. Azeez Al-Shire brought back at linebacker. Brandon Allen at quarterback. Antonio Gibson at running back. And CJ Uzomah at tight end. Those are my predictions for the first wave of free agency for the Tennessee Titans. Let me know your predictions down below. All I know is, folks, free agency is here. It's going to be a great week here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Can't wait to dive into all of it with you guys. Get subscribed. Stay subscribed. That is going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.